Hello, everyone. My name is Kennette Worlds, and I'm the Student, Faculty, and Young Professional Activities Coordinator at ACI. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, A Young Professional's Life in the Concrete Industry, Volume 1. We're glad that you could join us today. In this webinar, two young professionals will discuss what to expect when entering the concrete industry. The learning objectives for this webinar are as shown on the screen. If you have questions during the presentation, feel free to use the chat box found on your screen to ask a question. We will try to address as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers. Lauren McCauley is a project manager with Balfour Beatty Construction based out of Raleigh, North Carolina, Building Division. Her project management and estimating experience consists of a variety of public projects including healthcare facilities, K-12 schools, airports, and military installations. She is chair of ACI Committee S806 Young Professional Activities and a member of the Student and Young Professional Activities Committee. She is also a voting member of ACI 132, Responsibility in Concrete Construction, and an associate member of 302, Construction of Floors. Lauren earned her BS in Civil Engineering with a concentration in Structures in 2014 and her Master of Civil Engineering in 2017 from North Carolina State University. Andres Matos is a junior engineer at Flood Testing Laboratories in Chicago, Illinois. He primarily works as a geotechnical engineer in charge of field operations, including drilling, sampling, and performing specialized testing. His experience in geotechnical engineering investigations includes residential work, healthcare facilities, high-rises, and earth retention systems. He is co-chair of ACI Committee S806 Young Professional Activities and a member of multiple committees, including the Student and Young Professional Activities Committee, S802, S801 Student Competitions, ACI 522 Pervious Concrete, and ACI 325 Concrete Pavements. Andres earned his BS in Civil Engineering in 2017 from the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez. And now Lauren will begin today's presentation.
Hi everyone, this is Lauren. As Kennette said, our presentation today is on the life of a young professional in the construction industry. On our agenda, we are going to introduce ourselves a little bit more. We're going to tell you where we are, who we are, how our careers started, go through the topic and our advice to give to you and our experiences, and then we'll open it up for questions, as Kennette said. The purpose of this webinar is to give you all a preview into Andres and my experiences as we transitioned from college to working full-time. Both Andres and I are in the construction industry. I'm in the construction management world, and Andres does testing and inspections. As you can see here, there are many options when considering construction. We'll cover those on a later webinar. Kennette already covered who I am personally, but to give you a little more background on who I am professionally, I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. On my free weekends, I enjoy backpacking in the mountains. I love to cook and listen to music, and it's one of my goals to visit all of the national parks in the United States. I'll hand it over to Andres to tell us a little more about who he is.
Yeah, hello everybody. Kennette gave you my technical background, but I'm originally from San Juan, Puerto Rico. Between my hobbies and when I'm not here breaking stuff or playing with dirt, I like cars, I enjoy speed and racing cars, and I love to travel, going places, usually very fast. And yes, I do pour concrete for fun. I have a bunch of pieces that should not be made out of concrete, but they are, and I have it around. And then obviously not everything is having fun and working. I also volunteer at the Shriners Hospital for Children, and obviously for the Boy Scout of America, I do hiking, camping, and give them merit badges, and that's stuff I do outside of pouring concrete and playing with dirt.
So we'll go into a little bit about how our career started. I received my first job offer as I was fundraising for our ACI student chapter, actually. The company that I started working for donated to our chapter, and I thanked them at the career fair. So you never really know what will set you apart from the other applicants. I first started working for a company in Charlotte, North Carolina, but I accepted another position with a different company about a year and a half later in Raleigh. I chose to work for them because they have a great reputation in this market and because they mainly do CM at risk work. That's one thing that I really didn't realize before I started working, is that the project delivery method greatly influences how you are expected to work with the owners, the design team, and subcontractors. So one thing that I didn't realize before I started working was that the project delivery method greatly influences how you're expected to work with owners, the design team, and subcontractors. So if you want to be in the CM or GC world, make sure that you understand what that company does before signing the offer letter. No delivery method is bad or good. It just depends on what you will enjoy the most for you. I've been working for about 5 years. I graduated in 2014 in May. When I first started, I was only managing a few subcontractors. They were really just the finishing subcontractors. And I was so excited to start working. There was so much information, but it was a lot of fun.
In my case, my everything started for me at the ACI convention in Anaheim, California. I was just out of school or about to finish, and my current boss, Walter Flood IV, said, "Hey, I have an opportunity as a geotech engineer." I'm like, "Well, I don't know much about soils, but I'm willing to learn," and I decided to take the risk of learning something completely strange for me at that time. But because my background is mainly concrete, why I choose this opportunity, it was based on the variety of projects. I'm the kind of person that likes to do something different every day, and the testing side of the construction industry give you that opportunity. Today you see asphalt, tomorrow is concrete, the next day is steel, and that variety, that opportunity to grow and learn something new, that's what moved me into this position. I have been doing this for exactly 2 years today, which is kind of awesome, and I love it, and it's very interesting. When I first started, it was a lot of shadowing, and mostly because geotechnical engineering is based on knowing your soils, having your experience of dealing with them, and helping the constructors do it properly. And I had a bunch of time shadowing my boss and the other technicians to make sure I learned how it is done properly, and how to do it, and how to help others do it. Well, my feelings, it was extremely scary on Friday, especially because I moved to a completely different place. I moved from Puerto Rico to Chicago, Illinois, and it's a completely different environment, different techniques, different equipment, and everything seems so new and so different, so interesting, but at the same time unknown. And it was scary, but at the end of the day, it was a lot of fun. So talking about fun, let's go into what we actually do in a daily basis.
So I'm a project manager. I work on projects from the very beginning to the very end. First, we participate in constructability reviews with the owner and design team. That will kind of depend, at the beginning of a project kind of depends on what kind of delivery method your company typically does. But that's where we start in the process. So then we bid out the work to the subcontractors, and I put the bids together, put the scopes together, and then we get contracts written, submittals going when we start up the project. We manage the work as it's taking place and make sure people get paid and get their change orders, because otherwise they stop showing up if they don't get paid. And then finally, we make sure that we get our certificate of occupancy and our final inspections, make sure that we organize owner training so that they know what kind of building that they're getting. We make sure that the owner has their closeout documents. That's a whole ordeal to manage and get to them. And then we make sure that we respond to any warranty requests. And then kind of on a day-to-day basis, I'm directing work, making sure that everybody has exactly what they need so that they can keep going. People have so many questions every single day. Just trying to make sure that they get their answers, they get answers to their questions, and they can keep moving forward so that we don't delay anybody. And this project over here to the right is the project that I'm currently working on. We're doing a new baggage handling building, and I'll show you another picture on the next slide here. So from top left, the first picture is actually of a padded room in a mental hospital. That's a picture of my mom there. I was showing her around. This project was very interesting because it had so many different things that you really don't see on other projects. So you had the complicated portions of it being a hospital, but then you had all of the safety and security regulations of it being that, you know, people are there sometimes against their will. The next picture is of a runway that we rehabilitated last fall. This is out at RDU Airport. The next picture is of a high school that I did a few years ago. That's the gym area, so that was interesting. That was a 2-year-long project. In the bottom left, that is a picture of our annual Pink Out Day, where we raise money for women's cancers. And to show the guys our appreciation, we bring out chicken dinners for everyone. So we try to reward them and have a little bit of fun at the same time. And then the next picture is of another high school that I did. That's been a few years ago now, but that was just earlier in the project. And then finally, the last picture is of the project that I'm doing right now. That was taken last week, I believe. So you can see the baggage handling belt. We're installing that new in a new TSA screening area, and that's going from the existing terminal to this new baggage handling building. So it's kind of an interesting project there.
In my case, since I'm in the geotech side, I have to read a lot of proposals and mostly interpret what the client wants, because sometimes geotech is very specific and sometimes they say, hey, I just need to know if I can make the building or not. So I have to read a lot of proposals and go back and forth and try to understand what they want, how they want it, and then provide recommendations of the operations. And as you can see in the 2 pictures below, or well, to the right, those are the machines we usually use for drilling. They are big, they are heavy. We're talking about 35 feet tall, about 8 to 9 feet wide, and 38 to 42,000 pounds. So it's kind of a heavy equipment, and making sure we can safely perform our job and be safe there, and everybody understand what we are doing. So that includes a lot of driving, going around site visits, checking that we can actually be there, because those machines doesn't fit in basements, and sometimes they want us to get into basement with those. So it's a matter of educating at the same time you're trying to do your job. Therefore, I have to make a lot of reports, and the part that I like the least is to read them, because after I read them, after I make it, I have to read it and make sure that I'm giving enough information to the owner so they understand what we did, and giving information to the contractor of how to proceed with that soil and that place and that site in specific conditions, and also to the structural engineer so they can properly design the building or modify the design they have. So you have to be in a line of, you don't go very technical, but you don't go too under technical. So it's a very fine line of reporting what you did. I visit a lot of job sites for the testing side of the company for concrete or the asphalt, and I supervise our technicians, making sure they have everything they need and they are doing it safely and properly, and making sure we are meeting the client expectations in every job. In the next slide, I have a couple of jobs that I have been involved in. The first one, well, sometimes I have downtime in job sites, and I decide to go free with my photography interest, and that's my hard hat after a pressure meter job. The next one is a concrete pour for a post-tension deck in the 9th floor, I think that was. I was interested because it was one truck every, I don't know, minute and something. It was very interesting to see the fast turnout of concrete. The next one, since I have to go on the buildings, this is from the 78th floor of the Vista Tower in downtown Chicago. This is the Aqua Tower, and it's a beautiful building. It's actually impressive to be that high and be able to see the city from the top. The next one is my pressure meter. That's a Texan E pressure meter. It's mostly used for getting the modulus of elasticity of soils. You drill and lower that probe into the soil and push some fluid into it, and based on the expansion of that bladder that I have in the center, you get the stress and strain curve, and that will give you the modulus. There's a lot of math involved in it, but it is fun and it gives you the opportunity to be outside. The next one is a very unique picture because that's an actual deep foundation casing, a bell casing, and that's the interface between the concrete of the casing and the actual bedrock in Chicago downtown at 115 feet. And I think it's pretty amazing to be able to see it. We have it in the office because it's such a unique piece that we have here. In the bottom is a couple of job sites, and then the middle one, it's a project we did to improve our roadway, and we use Geotech styles and stone to backfill it so we can provide better conditions for the cars to run around. And this is what I do now, but it's kind of different from when I started.
So when I first started, I was lucky enough to have such a wonderful project team. All of them made working so much fun and made the project so much fun. They were willing to answer my questions. I realized that there is so much that I didn't know. And it was just so awesome because you could learn that you've got a lot left to find out. So my advice for anybody who would be going from college to working full time would be to just be yourself. Make sure that you're being authentic. You don't need to pretend to be anybody else. They hired you for a reason. Make sure that you're encouraging others, because you're only as strong as the people that you're working around. So you're not going to get any further by pushing other people down. It's really going to make you really make you a leader if you're encouraging other people to be their best as well. And that will in turn make you your best. One thing I learned early on in my career, I heard it from I believe Jack Welch, but he said to be happy for other people's success. And it's just such a great piece of advice, because if you can get joy out of other people's promotions and other people's triumphs, things that they've been really trying hard on, it's so rewarding, because that's going to happen much more frequently than if you're just only concerned with yourself. If you're happy for everyone else, then you can be happy a lot more frequently, and make sure that you're really supporting other people. So I would definitely recommend trying to and work on that as much as possible, to be happy for other people, and make sure that you're following through. So if you tell somebody that you're going to do something, make sure that you do it. That'll really set you apart from other people, and make sure that your reputation is really going to build, because they're always going to know that you're going to get something done if you promise that you will. That'll make a difference for the owners. That'll make a difference for your own site team, for the subcontractors, or really anybody that you're working with. But it's such an impressive quality. So make sure, if you can't do it, tell somebody that you don't have time, but make sure if you do, that you do follow through on it.
In my case, the biggest change was the walkthrough. I'm the first engineer in my family, so I didn't have anyone to say, hey, this is how construction is done. So when I first started, everybody was taking me by the hand and say, hey, this is soil, this is concrete. And it was a very interesting experience. It was almost like being in a classroom, but more fun. And it was, my advice is to get those walkthroughs. It have to come from you, like, hey, I want to see this. I know this exists and this is different. I want to see it. And that's how you grow as a professional. Make sure you know where you are going and whether your goals, both physically and professionally. Physically meaning that don't get lost. Know where the job site is. I get lost my first 4 or 5 months of working here. They send me to a job site and I end up somewhere else, and I end up calling the office and say, hey, how do I get out of here? So make sure you know where you're going, and professionally know where you want to go. I want to be an expert in concrete, or I want to be an expert in soils or asphalt. Try to figure out what you like and what comes naturally to you. And in that way, you will be able to go for a certification or go for a class or ask more people about specific topics. So knowing where you are, when you're going, it's kind of important, and it's not something you're going to get in the first 2 weeks. It's something that is you're going to be working on that every single day of your work life. Being prepared to execute. Remember, you are the engineer. You go out there. You usually go out there when there is an issue. So everybody's expecting you to come forward, and you cannot recommend something you cannot do. I'm not saying you have to be the backhoe loader operator, but knowing that, hey, this machine is too heavy, is going to sink, or this crane, it doesn't have the power to lift these pieces of equipment, and being prepared to execute, meaning that you know how to safely perform the work and how to use the tools properly to make the work more efficient. And my advice is, you work to live, you don't live to work. So make sure you have clear boundaries on, okay, this week I push 60 hours, I need a break. And make sure you take those breaks, because that's what is going to keep you alive, literally alive. And having those lines, there are times that I have to work the weekends, yes, but make a balance and make sure you are always keeping that between you and your coworkers. Hey, you cover me this weekend, and I cover you the next one, so you can have that balance. And make sure, remember, you are there for your knowledge of engineering. You are there for what you know and what you can do. So be proud of that. And talking about why you're there, and that you are there for your knowledge and preparation, that lead us to the next slide. That it's, if we have faced any discrimination during working, and that is our next slide that we are going to talk about. So Lauren, I will let you start, because you're the boss here.
So the short answer to this question for me is yes. I believe that I've been treated differently because of my gender while I've been working. It's definitely something that came to me as somewhat of a surprise when I started working full time, because I hadn't really experienced that as a student. But everybody's experiences obviously are different. I think the best thing is just to be able to recognize it so you can overcome what you experience. Be sure that you don't get discouraged if you do face any sort of discrimination or different treatment because of who you are. Make sure that you prove them wrong, because that is the most satisfying thing of anything, is if you prove something that they don't think that you can do just because of a quality that really in the end doesn't matter. Make sure that you support others when you see them being treated unfairly, and make sure that you know that you're not alone. And I hope for your sake that you will have somebody who will support you. Sometimes people don't always have that, but just know that there are other resources out there, Andreas and myself, if you ever want to contact us or want to talk something through. But make sure that you identify somebody who you're willing or you're comfortable with talking about it, because it's not something that you need to just suffer through alone. It sucks and it's a waste of time, definitely, but I know that you'll always get through it.
Yeah, in my case, but the short answer is yes. In my case, is because of my ethnicity, and there is a lot of confusion and misinformation about it. And hopefully, nobody have to go through this, but we know it exists, and it's important for you to be aware of it, and be honest with yourself. If you know something might come up, go to your HR department, human resources. Go talk to them and say, hey, I think this might happen. What is our procedure? What are our contacts? Who do I call? Who do I talk to? And how we handle this? Because different companies may have different policies, and it's important for you to understand that it's something that happens. It's not your fault. And remember, you are there for your knowledge. You are not there for any other characteristics. You are there because you know engineering, you are the engineer, and you have to make sure of that. You go in, you do your work, you do it properly, you get out. And at the end of the day, this is a team effort. We need to get that building done, period. So don't let this discourage you. Don't let this make you feel lesser person or anything like that. It's just things happen. Just take the experience and be able to transmit it to younger engineers when you get older. But the main thing about this is go to your HR, talk to them, and sometimes it's not even you. You see something happen to a coworker, and that coworker is struggling with it. Reach out to them and say, "Hey, I'm here to help, and let's go to HR together. Let's talk to human resources and get the proper tools to handle this." Your degree is civil engineering or related sciences. It's not psychology, it's not accounting. It's you're there as a civil engineer, so this type of stuff you look for an expert in it and get it fixed and get the right tools for doing it. And it's an experience. It's like being an intern. When you're an intern, you learn a lot of stuff, and then when you go to a full-time job, you specialize in something. And talking about interns, let's talk about internships a little bit, because I know most of you have been in internships or are going to be in an internship soon. I was never an intern, but Lauren was, so I will let Lauren talk about the internship part.
So during my internships, I definitely learned so much information, and they were a lot of fun. It's definitely great so that you can figure out what you do and what you don't want to do before you sign an offer letter to work full time, because it's much more difficult to change companies once you do that. So from that point of view, they were absolutely wonderful, and I learned so much from the people that I worked with. But I definitely loved working full time more than just being an intern. I felt like I had more ownership when I started working full time, and I was really a part of the team. So if those are two things that are discouraging you, then just make sure that you know that that's going to change once you become a full-time employee. But a few recommendations, because Andres and I have both had interns working under us. Andres, if you want to start with the recommendations.
Definitely. As I said, I was never an intern, but in my time here, I've had 3 interns. It was a very different experience. It was so cool because they are basically my age, and I have to behave properly and tell, yes, this is how it's done. But then they go into, hey, in school they told me this, and I'm like, yeah, I know. So it's a very interesting conversation of how things change from school to the field. But the main thing is ask questions. Ask questions, because if you don't ask questions, it's one of 2 things. Either you're not paying attention or you know it all. And I know you don't know it all, because I don't, and nobody knows all. So ask questions. There's no silly questions. Questions here are good for you because it might lead to something different, or for you to discover something different. So the main point here is ask questions, and that will lead you to be engaged and pay attention to what you're doing, and try to think like, okay, I'm doing it this way, how can I improve? And that will help you understand and will help you ask questions. And it's about you understand what you're doing and trying to get as much as you can from your mentors.
So I know that a lot of people might be kind of hesitant to ask questions at the beginning, but it's absolutely expected. We started to kind of realize if we're not getting a lot of questions, and I can guarantee that if you are asked to do something and you say it's done, and we go back to check it and you say, well, I didn't know how to do it, then that is definitely much more telling than if you just ask us questions. That shows that you're really engaged, that you're working with us, that you want to do well. It's a mutually beneficial experience, the internship process, because you're helping us get a lot of work done and getting a lot of the things that are maybe more time consuming. And then we're here to help you learn as well. And just the last thing here is just pick up the phone. Make sure that you are making phone calls instead of just emailing or texting. I know that a lot of people in our generation are used to just texting other people, and it's not very common to pick up the phone, but it's absolutely invaluable to hear somebody else's voice when you're talking something through with them, or to hear their kind of perspective, because otherwise you might take something that they've written incorrectly, or you're missing information that it would take too long for them to write out. So that is one thing that's kind of I guess, generational thing for all of us to just keep in mind, that just push yourself. When I first started to become an intern, I was terrified to make any phone calls, and now I'm on the phone all day. So push yourself, and I guarantee that you'll feel more and more comfortable being on the phone. So here we've got how important is finding a mentor, and it's definitely very, very important. I mean, a mentor can recommend things for you personally and professionally, and make sure that you're making the most out of your career. So finding somebody who's experienced and making sure that they have your best interest in mind. They'll be willing to recommend opportunities sometimes, or just be able to encourage you, which is so great. And make sure that you're seeking out a mentor. It's not necessarily the responsibility of the mentor to seek you. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship there.
And having a mentor, I want to add that having a mentor is very important, especially when you are dealing with either concrete or soils, because most of it is based on experience. And yes, you use what you learn in school. I'm not saying that's useless. It's very good, and it's very important to understand those concepts. But the reality in the field, it changes, and you might have the same mix in every project, but these people added super plasticizers, or the other ones put water, and having that person there, having that mentor-mentee relationship is very important, because that's the person that is going to tell you, yes, this is right, and no, that's wrong. So having that voice of experience, nothing can substitute that. And the mentor-mentee relationship is very, very important. In the next slide, we point a couple of qualities that you should seek in a mentor. We're not going to go over all of them. We are preparing the next What I Wish I Knew for Raleigh, North Carolina. It will be next fall. We are going to have the What I Wish I Knew about the mentor-mentee relationship, and we're going to go deeper into this topic. But it's very important for you to actually seek out that mentor, talk to them, and be honest. Like, hey, I want to grow. I want to grow as a person, and I want to grow as an engineer and as a professional. Help me out. And that's when we accept someone as a mentee and we become mentors. That's the role we are accepting. We are accepting to being asked 358,000 questions per minute, and that's what we are there for, to answer as many questions as we can. And one of the biggest recommendations of any mentor is to get involved in professional and non-professional associations. Is our next slide. And getting involved in these extracurricular or professional associations, it helps you grow as a person and as a professional.
So like Andres said, that last slide, there was a lot of good information there just for you to have in mind as you go through and try to choose your mentor. Make sure that you're willing to share with them and that you feel comfortable with. But yes, as he said, one of those things that they can recommend is just what associations you can be involved with that will help your career or help you personally as well. So I am involved with the NC Airports Association. We have conferences, and they kind of talk about what work is upcoming so that we can have our eye out for any projects that we want to be involved with. I'm involved in LEAD, and then also just local networking groups so that you can meet different people in the industry and make sure that you're kind of learning about other opportunities within the area, because you can recommend projects for the company to pursue, which is a great thing.
In my case, besides ACI National and ACI Local, and most of you have seen me in the student competitions, I'm involved in the ASC GI, which stands for Geotechnical Institute, all the deep foundations and drilling and all the soil-related stuff. The NRMCA, which is the National Ready Mix Concrete Association. I'm involved there as an associate inspector for the ready mix plants, meaning that I go to the ready mix plant, I climb on it, I check the drums, I check the admixtures, and it's a lot of fun to see how the concrete is actually made. but this helped me grow as a professional. And then I go to the Shriners Hospital of Children, as I mentioned, and this helped me grow as a person. I build relationship with other people. Some of them are retired, some of them are working, but it gave me an insight of how life goes or might go, so I might be prepared. And talking about how life goes, let's talk about the money for a second, because life goes many places, and when you're a student, you are not very related to saving or having a steady paycheck. So in the next slide, we have.
So 1 second before we move forward. So just one recommendation for this is that make sure that any associations that you're involved with, that you pursue it wholeheartedly. It's not necessarily better to just be involved in everything and anything that you can think of. Make sure that you choose a few things that you're very passionate about and be really involved. Try to pursue leadership opportunities there. That will speak a lot more than just kind of being a member and only attending every once in a while in a bunch of different organizations. So make sure that you're really only pursuing what you're passionate about.
Yeah,
So
and again, it's what you said before. If you're going to say you're going to do something, do it. Because if you go to this, remember, these professional associations, this is where important people, quote unquote, go. And if you go there and you introduce yourself, you're representing you as an engineer and your company, and taking roles, leadership roles. It's great, and I believe everybody should at least try to take leadership roles. But if you go there and say, yes, I'm going to prepare this, and then for some reason you forget about it and don't do it, then it's your name and it's your company not doing it. So make sure you go until you can. So if you say you're going to do it, and seek for help. There's nothing wrong on seeking for help, and that's why you get involved with this. An example, I think a week or 2 weeks ago, I sent Lauren an email saying, hey, I have this testing for fire protection engineering. I don't do fire protection. Who does that? And she guided me through, hey, this should be the city, this should be an inspector, and we're still digging into it because it's part of what we do. I'm not a project manager, but she is, and this is, and I met her through ACI. So it's a matter of building those relationships, doing what you are asked to do and you say you're going to do. But this association is more than just going there and sitting, and mind that most of this, your company will pay for you to go, or pay the dinner, or give you a stipend for food, and it's not on you entirely, but it have to come from you, the desire of getting involved, and that's what is going to get you to different places. So let's talk about the money now. Please don't get crazy. Don't. That's bad. Excel is going to be your best friend. When you first started, you have no clue what is going to happen, and everybody wants your money. Welcome to adulthood. Everybody wants your money. So make sure you know how much you're earning. Make sure you know how much you're spending, and everything you spend, put it in the Excel. That thing adds and subtract automatically. So just throw it in there, and from time to time, keep an eye on it, and it will help you have money in your pockets and still have something to have fun.
So make sure that you're prioritizing your needs and your wants. I mean, it's good. I know that it'll be exciting when you have a bunch of money. I mean, not a bunch of money, but have more money possibly than what you're making just as a student. But make sure that you're not just buying everything that you want, because you do want to save as much as possible. I know that everybody's financial situation is different. Everybody's supporting a different number of people, not just themselves. But make sure that you're pushing yourself as much as possible to save, because saving, especially early on in your life, will have such a great impact later on. I know that retirement seems like it's probably pretty far away, but it's probably going to get here sooner than you think. But if your employer has a 401k that you can match, or that they'll match to up to a certain percentage, make sure that you're putting in at least that much. Take advantage of any sort of resources that your company offers, because sometimes whoever's providing the 401k, if that is something that your company's offering, there will be resources with those financial institutions. And I know that I've gone in and really met with a few people and just try to discuss my goals. And it's been really helpful to figure out what I need to invest in, because I definitely don't know what to do there. I'm very green in that regard. But definitely, I think that there are studies out there that if you contribute early on in your career, you will have much more in retirement than if you put money into your 401k early in your account, early in your life, and then stop like at 30 or 35, versus if you start at that time and contribute all the way until you retire, you'll actually have more than if you just only contribute when you're younger. So that's how much of an impact it has for you to make sure that you're matching or putting as much as you can into your 401k.
Yeah,
And finally,
you have to be,
oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, I go then.
Yeah, go ahead.
It is something that remember, you're young now, so you have all the energy and the effort to accomplish more. So if you start saving now, in the near future, you're going to be able to take it slower or take it easier in some areas and feel more comfortable when those big expenses come in, like buying a house or buying a car or getting married or kids to school or whatever those expenses are. You're going to be more prepared and have a financial strength that will make it possible. And again, companies are run by many people and there are many resources. So don't be afraid to ask your mentor, like, hey, this is my first income tax thingy that I do. I have no clue what I'm doing. Go in and ask. Say, hey, I need your help. How you did it? Because that's when the mentor kicks in and say, well, when I was your age, I did it this way and the government took everything. Or I did it this way and it worked. So, and ask. Go to the accounting department and say, hey, who here do the tax income, whatever thing you have to do depending on state or counties you are in, and they will help you out. And at the end of the day, you're going to be able to decide where you want to move and how much you need to put where and when. And then you go and see that Illinois, it's very expensive and they take out 35% of your salary. Great. But those are things to know. And that's how you negotiate your offers. Because we did what I wish I knew a couple of years ago about negotiating your first job offer. And I think Lauren was in the panel. And it's currently available in the YouTube channel from American Concrete Institute. And these are things you need to know. How much is the sales tax? How much is the income tax? Whatever. It's complicated. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's something to know, and you have to ask, because nobody is going to walk by your cubicle and say, hey, do you know that the income tax go up this year? I'm like, no, nobody's going to do that. So it's have to come from you, and ask and be conscious about this and save as much as you can, because in the near future you're going to need it.
Yes, definitely. So in some cases, when you're first starting out, it's just you. I know that that's not across the board, but this is definitely the time to put away money so that you make sure that you're set later on. Like Andres said, that's a great webinar or panel discussion. I think it's now a webinar that you guys can go seek out. But make sure that you are negotiating for whatever you feel is appropriate. But there are a lot of other things to negotiate for than just money. But yeah, there's a lot of forms at the very beginning with taxes and everything else that you have to choose how much to withhold. But just make sure that you are asking people those questions, because you don't want to be not prepared when you do your taxes the next year and have to pay a bunch of money, which is actually better than if you get a refund. But still, you don't want any sort of surprises like that. Andres, do you have anything else that you want to discuss?
Well, besides, I think the main point here is don't get crazy and prioritizing. Make sure that you know what you need and what you want, because you might want a lot of stuff but it's not exactly what you need. And that's key, because if you go to Target, and that's a bad idea, never go to Target because you spend your money. But you go somewhere and you say, oh, I need this. No, do I need it or do I want it? And that's the key in this, and making sure you are able to differentiate those and improve with time. We're young. I have committed mistakes. I'm sure Lauren have her mistakes too, and it's a day-to-day basis. It's about learning. So with this, we're going to open it up for questions. If someone has a question.
For 1 second. So just like overall, just to summarize the whole presentation, we're very excited for you. If you're just starting out your career, it's an exciting time. You have so much opportunity in front of you, whether you realize it or not. Make sure that you're accepting a job offer where you want to work ultimately. Be thinking of that. Be thinking of the fun things as well as just making sure that you have a job offer. Make sure it's something that you want your career path to go into, that it'll help your end goals, and just have fun with it. There's just so much that you can learn. But otherwise, yes, we will go on ahead and start and open it up for questions.
Thank you, Lauren and Andres, for a very informative presentation on what it's like to enter the concrete industry. We would now like to open it up for questions. You can use the chat box on your screen to ask a question, and we will try to address as many of those questions as we can. ACI is definitely an international organization. We're in 120 questions, and I can already see that we have attendees signed on from multiple continents. And our first question actually comes from Eric in Ghana. He says, I have realized that what I have learned in class is not entirely the same as what is actually happening in the field. How do I transition into the industry knowing that what I have learned in class is, in fact, the best practice?
Well,
go on ahead.
I don't know if you want to go ahead. Yeah, go ahead while I use my brain to think.
Okay. So I would say, from my perspective, I absolutely felt the same way. I would say that for the most part, when you first start, people don't really expect you to know a lot about a lot of it is company related as well, but a lot of the day-to-day activities. So we're expecting to teach you all what you need to know your first day. It's a matter of learning and showing us that you're retaining what we're saying. Take a ton of notes. That's a big thing, so that you're not asking multiple times. If you have to clarify a few things, that's great. But otherwise, that's the joy of it, is that, you learned a background and you have something to where you can recognize different terms or different ideas. But otherwise, you're kind of starting from a blank slate. So I would say, for the most part, it's definitely not the expectation to know everything, or not even to know everything, but it's just a lot different from in the university versus working full time. And that's kind of the beauty of civil engineering and construction in general, is just that it's different every day. It's different for every single person. So there's no way that you can learn all of this in class.
Yeah, and I will say I totally agree, and I'm mostly in the field lately, even though it's cold. But it's not the same. With the time, you're going to realize, like, oh, this is what the professor was saying. That enlightenment is going to come in. But in the meantime, it's a matter of focusing on what you have to do. You have to design a foundation. Okay, what do I know? And then you go to your book and you refresh your mind and say, okay, this is how you design, and now what do I have? And with the time, you're going to start linking one thing with the other one, like, oh, this go with this and this go there, and it's a baby step procedure. But at first, it will be very unknown. It's like, oh, what do I do now? And that's the fun part, because then your engineering judgment comes in, like, okay, I need to solve this. These are my tools. Boom, done. But then 10 years later, you realize, like, wow, when I did that job, I should have done this. And that's where you grow as a professional. So don't be afraid. keep asking questions and try to link what you learn in school with what you're doing. And it might seem very far apart now, but with time, you're going to start seeing it all come together like, oh, it's the same, it's just different. It's hard to explain, but you will see, it will come together at some point.
Okay, so I have another question. It's a two-part question. One part is for Andres, the other part is for Lauren. So for Andres, that we have someone who wants to know that he's currently working in the lab world, but he wants to move into industry. What do you recommend, and is it a big change? And
If
then
you
for
are,
Lauren,
oh,
I'm sorry, and then for Lauren, I want her to start thinking about her answer. Um, he also wants to do a master's degree, and then do you have any advice for pursuing a master's degree, or should he just focus on the degree or work at the same time? Which one is better? So Andres, you can respond first.
cool. It is, they're two different animals. It's completely different. If you are full time in the lab, it's very different from being in the lab to being in the field, especially because everything in the lab is controlled. You have controlled temperatures, you have controlled equipment, everything is calibrated, and you have the same person doing the stuff. So the possibilities of human error is minimum, and you are in a controlled environment. It's like living in a bubble. The field, anything can happen at any time, from something blowing up or catching on fire to something being not properly done. So my recommendation will be to, if your company have people in the field, talk to them. For example, if you're in a construction materials lab and you're doing a proctor, you who's the project manager for that project? Talk to them like, hey, this is the result for the proctor I did, but where is the project? Can I go and see it? And then expose yourself to that thing you tested in the lab, where it came from, and try to link one and the other, and try to get the managers to take you to that project and see it. Or if you can go on your own, do it, because that's what going to give you that advantage of understanding the lab work and how it relates to the actual field work. And that's how you're going to learn to be in the field. I do both, so that's why I know more or less how to transition. I'm going to give you my experience with the master's degree anyways, because yeah, I like to talk. But I was supposed to do my master's when I finished grad school, but when I finished my bachelor's, but then I went to work. And right now I do research in the lab. And at some point I'm going to go back to school. So don't rush it. That will be my advice for your master. But I let Lauren explain it deeper because she actually did it. So Lauren, your turn.
So I actually did my master's while I was working full time. That's definitely not for everyone, but I would highly recommend it. You're kind of sacrificing 2 years of your time, but one, my company funded me to go back to grad school, which was great. And two, you're kind of learning things side by side. So you're learning things while you're working in the field, and then you're learning things in the classroom, which is a really great experience. But if that's something that's not good for your schedule to do one after the other, I guess it's just kind of a personal preference. You know, it's a lot to remember how to learn to study again. So I would say don't wait too long if that's something that you want to do, is to go back to grad school. But overall, at least for what I do, the graduate degree was kind of a personal goal for me. But I don't know if in the everyday world, if you just kind of want to be in project management forever, if you need to go back and get your master's. Obviously, I think somebody told me that everything that you go and pursue is another door that you open. So it's not a bad thing to want it, but will it hinder you from accomplishing what you want in your career? I don't know that that's necessarily true if you want to go into construction management.
Okay, I have another question with regard to your typical work day. Like, how many hours are you working? And also, do you have to work over the weekends? And also, do you have to do any travel outside of your city for work?
I can
In my
start.
case, I
Oh,
don't know. You go.
okay. So in the position that I'm in now, I don't travel for work very frequently. Mainly just the ACI conventions and other opportunities that are like that. But um, I would say on average, obviously the workday is going to be a little bit longer. I don't want to be discouraging or anything. Um, I sometimes, for the most part, work like 12 hours a day, which obviously can vary based on your personality or who you are. I mean, if you get things done very quickly, then that's great. You probably don't have to work that long. It's mainly just about getting your work done. I am very detailed and like to do a lot of research with everything, so it takes me a little bit longer. But um, I do have to work on the weekends as well. We just kind of rotate, but there's definitely a balance there, and I wouldn't let that discourage you because it's like having your job site's kind of like your family. I mean, a lot of people support each other. It's nice to be able to learn from other people after hours. So um, I mean, it is longer than a 40-hour week, but it's a fun, longer 40-hour week, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree. My case is the same. It's in a project by project basis. Sometimes I have 6 hours and I'm done and I go home because I'm bored or I'm sleepy. But sometimes I have drilling and pressure meters and I have to be out 12 hours. It depends on the project, it depends on what you're doing and the amount of detail needed for you to complete your job. But as Lauren said, is about getting your milestones done. As long as you get it done, that's the point. Get it done. And it's not about sitting in an office for 13 hours watching Netflix. No, it's actually working and it will change. Maybe in winter is shorter and summer is longer. It will change. But yeah, I work a little bit over 40 hours a week, but it changed from project to project. So it will change.
Well, that's actually all the time we have today for questions. Please remember to fill out the brief survey available immediately following this presentation. We are very interested in learning about topic ideas that you would like to see in the future. That concludes today's webinar presentation. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope to see you at the next ACI convention in Chicago in the spring. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.